Let's get started here with today's webinar on workplace data science and meeting room trends. My name is Ari Kepnes, and I'm the Director of Market Research here at Density. And my role is to really understand how the evolving conversations around workplace are changing the way offices and workplaces affect experience. And I'm joined by Sean. Sean, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. I'm the Senior Data Scientist here at Density. My position allows me to move between all the teams, hardware and software, and look for value in all of the data we collect.
And today's agenda will be a short introduction about Density, so you have some context into who we are as a company. And then we are going to share just a snippet from a workplace utilization report, which is a report that spanned data across a customer set. And then we are going to talk about these implications in terms of how to make this real in your own organization in terms of products, but also with an analytics demo that Sean will be leading. And then we'll take your questions. So at the top of the bottom of your screen, you should see a folder with Q on it. And you can click on that at any point in this and have a question posted, and then we will revisit them at the end. You can post them anonymously or not. And we will hopefully be helpful to you. We're going to take 20 minutes or so to run through the content, try to not have you sit here for too long, and then take your questions. So at Density, we are a company that is focused on occupancy analytics, and we build the most advanced people counting sensor. And on that note, we are, as Sean mentioned, both a hardware and a software company. We're able to have this sensor platform, which is our own, it's proprietary. And the way it works is that it's placed above a doorway or entryway. And as people enter and exit space, it's able to measure real-time space occupancy. So it counts how many people are entering and exiting the space. And there's real-time implications for this through integrations. And then also we can see data over time about how are people using space, which makes all of this conversation real in terms of making changes to your workplace. Here are some of the clients that we work with, very large Fortune 500 companies, as well as companies that are either growing, consolidating, and not just with workplaces, but also campuses at large, so higher education and other types of companies. Now, we're going to start here with this workplace utilization index. And Sean and I, like he had said, we both work kind of in different parts of the organization, but we knew that at Density, we were collecting a lot of data across all of our different customers. So we looked at 11,800 hours of data across 60 customer locations. And we wanted to look specifically at meeting rooms and this question of how do people actually meet? And the reason why is because there's so much emphasis today on collaboration, on creating shared spaces. And, you know, as we know, most offices today are open. And so the spaces where people actually use to do their work and collaborate as people is meeting rooms. So we wanted to look at that and see what could we learn from it. And what are some of the insights about how offices are being designed and built and operated today. And you can download that report right there. There's a link there. And we'll also be able to send that over as well as the follow-up. So you can see here, this is also just Workplace Design Magazine. We will show you just a snippet of some of the insights. And the reason why this is important, why should you care about this, is because it's really a part of this shift to be able to inform both the experience of the workplace, but also the way that the workplace can realize some efficiencies. And a good workplace is able to balance both of those things, and data is the way to do that. So let's look at some of the insights from this report and what it actually means for end users today.
So Ari, if we could just pull out a couple of the charts from that report. I hope everyone has time to look over the full thing. But we wanted to extract a couple that we thought were really, really insightful or surprising. This first one really surprised me. I expected to see the number of attendees in meetings to have a nice smooth curve, exponential decay. A lot of smaller meetings, very few really large, board meetings or all hands for the whole company. And we saw that with one exception. We see a big, big, tall bar here under 1. So single person meetings, or more often than not, folks just grabbing a space to take a call, to watch a webinar, to just get some work done in a quiet area and maybe a busy office, tends to be the number one case here. So I expected that to be a little flatter and to not have that big spike there at 1. So this tells us, and this is just a snapshot over 6 months across all of our conference rooms fleet-wide. If we did this again every year and we had historical data going way back, I would bet that we see this number continue to rise and to be a lot flatter historically. As folks take more and more time to collaborate online, they need these small spaces, somewhere to go and just be by themselves with their laptop to make a call. And again, maybe watch a webinar like this one, just off on their own, their headphones on. Another way of looking at this or slicing this data up is to look at the duration that these rooms were used and by what group size. So again, one person, really big here. On the right-hand side, we see one person occupied these spaces 36% of the time that they were in use at all. 2 to 4 people is the next largest group at 40%. So that's on par with just one person. 2 to 4 is on par with just one. That's certainly something that was very enlightening for me. If you had asked me, or if you go to someone on the street and say, what size is your average meeting? Very few people would say 1 or even 2. When most folks picture meetings, they picture a meeting room. Meeting rooms have, usually 6 to 10 seats. And so meetings must be 6 to 10 people, right? Well, the data is telling us that those are actually quite infrequent. Those are around 18% of the time we see 5 to 10 people.
So why is any of this important? Well, not only do you want to, as an organization, understand how are people actually meeting, but then you need to understand, are my actual spaces supporting those needs? And what we found is in many cases, in most cases, that's not always true. Meaning, we were looking at some of the largest rooms, for example. I'll just share with you that if you look at rooms that are over 13, designed for over 13 people, they're often very much underutilized, meaning that 50%, over 50% of a extra large meeting room is not going to be utilized when only half that amount of people are in the room. And so there's also this idea of let's understand meeting rooms, understand the meeting needs, and do it in your own organization, not just in aggregate, but then create some sort of standards that meet those needs in terms of space allocation, and space analytics inform that, of course. Well, we didn't want to just stop there. So Sean and I, we looked at this report, and Sean did a lot of the actual analysis, and then we said, what could we actually do with this? So we shared these results, meaning we shared some of the insights of how these workplaces were used with over 30 corporate real estate leaders from large companies, Fortune 500 companies, PwC, Verizon, Intel, and a lot of others. And we said, what do you think is going on? Like, why is it, as you can see me in that room there in that picture, I'm in a meeting room alone, and what's going on here? Why is workplace data saying this? And they said that, well, this is actually a testament to some of the major concerns that are happening today in workplaces. There's a lack of privacy, lack of clear guidelines on how space should be used, and ongoing data collection, or sometimes people just have too much noise and distraction in the open office environment. So they're seeking, and they're in effect, it's not really meetings, but they're using these meeting rooms as private offices. So this clearly is a big problem in our industry today. And it's a kind of a story that no one is talking about because it's hard to really collect this data. Until now, we haven't been able to, of course. So let's look at what these industry experts actually said as recommendations on this next slide here. We said to them, okay, based on some of this data, how would you design spaces? How would you redesign space based on some of these insights about meeting rooms and collaboration? And what they did was they actually were a lot more thoughtful about a variety of spaces for people to meet. We see here that on the bottom here, this group, we broke them up into groups. at a recent event. And so they were able to say, okay, well, we think about space as a tool and people need to be taught how to use that tool. So it's just as important to have the space allocated, but also have a variety of spaces that can suit different needs. On the top right, you can see a 4 or 5 person conference room that can either be a smaller room, or it can double as a 10-person room plus by a simple divider. And so those are the type of creative solutions that data is now allowing for this whole industry of thinking about using data to change how a workplace is designed, but also how it's being used in real time, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So what are some of the implications? Well, we believe that you have to, if you are an organization, you have to collect data on your own employees. You can't just trust Sean or I. You can't trust any other workplace because everyone is working different, and different departments, different companies have different challenges that impact how they're using spaces. But if this were some of the data that you are finding in your own organization, then you can start to think about this in terms of ratios and refining your standards for meeting rooms. So, for example, once we know that one person is using a large meeting room, well, that's telling us maybe we need some spaces for them specifically. And that's some of the rise today of things like phone booths and quiet areas. So if you were to take all of these findings out into a ratio of meeting room standards, here's what you would do. You would have for every 3 areas or phone booths for one person, besides the open office, you would have 4 other spaces for 2 to 4 people to meet, meaning those small conference rooms, which are so common. And then you would have 1 space for 5 to 6 people. And then you would have 2 spaces that could be divided, as we saw there, that we learned from our workplace team when we did this event. So you can see here that once you have utilization data, you can inform design, you can create a better experience that's both productive and cost efficient in terms of space efficiencies, which is the holy grail, really, of real estate. Now, what does this actually translate to? How do you make this real in your organization? Well, at Density, what we do is we're able to tie in some of these booking room data, some of these systems that are collecting how are people actually meeting, with our sensor data to really get crystal clear analytics on room utilization and utilization versus how things are booked. Because again, you can have a great number of spaces, but if it's not being used properly, then but because of either booking behavior or people like me are just going in there and using it, then you're not going to have a great use of space. So let's look at the next slide here. Here too, it's kind of a breakdown. We can see things like how are people actually meeting in by conference room by conference room. We can see by day or team, and we can also see a big problem here is these things called zombie meetings, where someone books a room but doesn't show up. So these are all the complexities of meeting rooms that we're really focusing on as an industry because space is more expensive and data is more available. So let's see, Sean, about how this actually comes together in analytics.
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks and have a real world example here. Here's, as you were just showing us, a dashboard that shows some custom reports for one of our customers. They have offices all over the world, from London to Chicago to San Francisco. And we can see at a glance where the value is. How many square feet per person at peak for those conference rooms? How many people are using conference rooms? We saw some rolled up analytics across the board for thousands and thousands of hours of meetings from the PDF report, but we can actually show those in real time for just your organization, just the spaces you're most interested in here in the bottom left. What I'm actually really keen to show you today is a powerful new aspect that we have in beta right now. This is available to all of our customers. We're calling it a beta because there's a lot of exciting functionality we still want to add to this. But I'd like to give you a quick tour today to show you the analytics product. This allows organizations to explore their data interactively. So this isn't just a static report or an email that you get, but instead I can go and say, let's look at meeting rooms. And that's really easy to add. I can look at their occupancy over the last, let's say, 30 days by hour. Oof, maybe that's a little too specific. This is a bit noisy and hard for me to read. I'm going to move that back to day. So this shows me peak occupancy by day for all of these spaces. Again, I can quickly add and remove a lot of spaces. Sky's the limit here. I can compare as much as makes sense for me and what I'm trying to achieve. The table at the bottom shows some roll-up information. We're looking to add some more columns here. We're looking for feedback on what folks would like to see here the most and be able to export into Excel or other products as well. I see the maximum here is 8 people in one of these conference rooms. These are all 6-person capacity conference rooms. So it looks like we're going over a little bit. I'm going to sort by that column, in fact, and see it's hotel desk 6 that's most utilized here. And we see that peak happened, it looks like on the 11th of September. That was a Wednesday. So we can drill in even further and we can look at other aspects like, let's say, visits for the last week to date. So far this week, we see Sunday really quiet, of course. No one was in the office. And then over here on Monday, folks really started showing up around 8 to 9 a.m. And we see our peak during the day is late in the afternoon and a couple peaks just after lunch. So this is how many visitors are coming into these big office areas. 30 visitors in a 15-minute interval. That's really busy. This is a big office. Their capacities are between 40 and 100 seats. And this is across several floors. And you can see this is the New York campus, San Francisco. I can kind of show that a little better, showing just today's. You can see that they terminate at different times because they're in different time zones, of course. And that data is going to slowly fill in over the course of the day. So we can see all of the New York campuses and San Francisco campuses on the same page here. This is really exciting for me. Not only is it interactive and I get really lost in this data, there's so much to see and to tease out of here, great value, but it's also just fascinating to watch in real time as this is updated. So Ari, I think there's a lot of value there and we're looking to only add more and more. That's really exciting to not just math nerds like me, but also folks who are interested in optimizing how they use conference rooms. And as you can imagine, just about any other use case, any other type of space can be added here, from great big hallways, conference halls, all the way down to very small facilities and phone booths.
Yeah, so no offense to you, Sean, but you don't have to be a data scientist to use our analytics tool. What we focus on is a ability to get real-time data, historical data, about how space is being used that's actually accurate. So you can start to make some of those decisions and answer some of those questions like we started with today. How are meeting rooms used and how could we make them better? So just a quick kind of high level synopsis about why our approach to it is something that we think has been helpful in terms of getting value to our customers, is that we have a private approach. So no personally identifiable information is ever collected with these sensors. It's secure and it's accurate. So we're accurately counting how many people are entering and exiting in real time. And then we make that data available through these type of integrations as well as dashboards and insights. The other thing that's really cool is that there's so much going on now in terms of, IoT, smart buildings and sensors, as well as security types of implications with all of this. But our approach is that we're actually being able to scan. This is how it works. It goes above a doorway or an entryway, and it's scanning in real time with non-visible light and looking for human objects. So we're literally using machine learning and algorithms that can detect human versus non-human objects, and everything else is just noise, to count how are people entering and exiting a space or using that space to make some of these decisions. So we're going to take your questions here. Before I do, I just want to drill it out to its kind of most basic takeaways here, is that, when you're collecting data on how spaces are used, you usually have a hypothesis. You usually think maybe I'm overusing space. Maybe I'm underusing space. Maybe my space needs of my employees aren't being met. There's some sort of a hunch that all of our customers, usually when they're looking at analytics, have. And then they can use this data to actually take a scientific approach. It's that simple. Am I right? Am I wrong? Where do I want to learn? Where am I going to be surprised? And then how does that actually help my employees have a better experience, as well as me make better decisions and justify expenses to my CFO or other people in my organization? So that's the bottom line here. And we want to make it real to you by understanding what is your problem that you want to have solved with density. So in terms of questions here, I am going to look. Please feel free. We have some people here. Include your questions, and we'll be answering them. Okay, so we have one question here around how do your devices collect data around smaller rooms or certain spaces. So the way that it works is our devices get installed above an entryway. So even if a room is small, we're able to put the device above a doorway. Or if a room has multiple doors, we're able to put these devices, these sensors, above those multiple doors. And as people enter and exit, we're able to count them. Now, the funny thing about humans is that we can't walk through walls, and we all have heads and shoulders. So our company and our technology is built on those two premises, where we count how many people are entering and exiting in that way. So we have another question here. What is the deployment process in terms of timing and how quickly you can scale this? So the way that deployment works is that we are able to get the devices. Like I said, they just simply get screwed in above a door or placed over there through a ceiling mount, and then we're able to start collecting data basically instantly. There's a very short calibration process where the device gets set up, and then we're also able to make sure that it's accurate, so we can do accurate checks. But we can get the timing is never really on our end; it's usually on the customer's end. So if you want to move fast, we can too. In terms of other questions here, let's see. Can you generate actionable insights automatically, or do we depend on experts? So that's a great question, and I think what gets lost in this when we do get deep in the data is to make sure we can make it actionable and real. So the bottom line is this: if you have a specific action that you think you might want to take, or you're trying to decide, density is the perfect solution to be able to assess that. But the types of actionable data that we've been actually helpful to drive ROI before, I'll just say quickly, is number one, we've had a large Fortune 500 be able to consolidate real estate. So they saved millions of dollars actually every year by identifying how many people actually enter just visits into a building. And they were able to say, okay, we need that property, but not that property. And that was an actionable insights directly from how we were organizing the data, as well as some of our email reporting. And do we depend on experts? I mean, our perspective is that if you are an expert, you should have this tool too, and you can happily use this with your clients. But we think that this whole way of making decisions does depend on accurate data. Okay, and then are the qualities of meeting rooms and quiet spaces per person that you shared at the beginning based on particular square footage, looks like. So what we were looking at is we want to understand broad trends across all of the meeting rooms with the clients and the way people were meeting. But you're right. If you were to actually do this in your organization, what you would do is you would start to group together the conference rooms that you thought had a specific use by square footage. And that's something that Sean kind of alluded to. And then you can actually define, is it meeting its need, and start to make changes that way. Meaning, do I have enough conference rooms that are for 4 to 5 people? Do I need more? Okay, well, those are great questions that came in. And one other question here we have is about data ownership. Does the customer own their workplace data that you collect from the device? The answer is yes. It's your data, and we will not. Our business model is not based on selling your data. You have access to that data to make those type of decisions, but also to make your employees happy. And then, can you say more about real-time data? Okay, that's a great point. So a lot of what we talked about today was related to historical data and trying to look at over the past few months or the past few while how is the space used? Let's make some decisions with that. But we are seeing more and more, this is clearly a trend in workplaces, that actionable real-time data is more and more important. So, for example, when you have data that's linked in, that's doing people counting, you can also really get some other cool byproducts, like we can actually integrate with your access control system, for example. So if someone badges in, but two people enter, because we have that real-time people count data, we can help with security use cases. We can also integrate with actual room booking data in real time, like I said. So you can see, how is this actually the space performing versus how many people book the space, how many people are actually there. So we're seeing more and more an increase in the need for real time data. And does the data that density collects modify planning standards for the design industry? Well, it looks like, yeah, Mark, you posted this for all panelists. If you want to help these standards become the standard, then yes, go ahead. I mean, I think that the problem with standards is that they shouldn't be uniform. So from our perspective, Sean and I weren't trying to solve for all workplaces, because we think that that's where things go wrong. We just want to know, what are some of the trends that you can actually surface when you study your own workplaces? What are the standards that you can adapt? And our most successful clients aren't always looking over at their shoulder at aggregates. They're trying to understand, how are our own employees using space, and developing standards from that. And I can tell you, the largest, biggest names, the largest real estate owners are ones that are not looking at necessarily what are some of the industry um, kind of jargon and trends, but how are our different employees using space? Which buildings have differences? Which types of conference rooms? Which types of teams? And they have those questions, and then they use us to get those insights and change that. But great question, and I would like to move the ball forward to make this industry a little bit more data centered, and that is happening. Okay. Well, great questions. I was really happy to kind of see that people were posting there, and then there were some other private questions as well. We will be passing this along, and again, please feel free to download our free report on all of our workplace utilization data. We'll be sharing that, and thank you for your time. So, on our last note, if you do have any questions, you can reach out to us at sales@density.io, or just respond to this content when we send it to you via email. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.